Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, quarter zip, pullovers, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
Hey, I'm Nick Gambarian.
And I am sickly Mike Forrester here after a long weekend. A little earlier than usual, and ready to theorize about some interesting news that we got from Ewan McGregor himself. But more importantly, let's talk about you guys for a second, because you're
We're
both
always
leaving.
talking about us, Mike.
Well, come on. Hey, listen. This podcast was founded by emo bros, and it is emo fest this weekend. So when are you both
bros?
When are you both leaving for Las Vegas?
For when we were young.
Thursday with an F. Thursday.
Okay.
I'm leaving Thursday with a TH.
Okay, Thursday. It's it's like a pterodactyl. And then Nick, you are hosting tours at the Punk Rock Museum.
Oh boy, I am. They're guided tours at the Punk Rock Museum.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 on Friday that are sold out. 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, and then 2 on Monday. So, yeah, if you're out there, could hang out, walk around with me, talk about punk rock.
How many people can go on a tour with you?
30 total each tour.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like a small group. But it's great. I did them last year during when we were young. It's a lot of fun. It's cool. If you're, each guided tour guide, gets to talk about whatever they want to talk about. So if you're signing up for me, I talk about my influences. There's a lot of bad religion in there, but there's, a lot of that stuff. And then just Bayside stories, because there's a lot of cool, awesome punk rock stuff. So I like to, there's also a gold record from Story of the Year in there, or is it platinum? I don't remember.
It would be gold, because I think it's Feldman's.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's cool.
Okay. And then we are on, this is year 3 of When We Were Young Fest. What are your thoughts on returning after you took last year off? Both of you.
I couldn't, we went last year, right? Were you there?
Yeah. We just went, hung out. Yeah, we were there.
Yeah. So it was great.
Well, neither of us will be canceling. We can say that confidently.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time. And it's going to be not too hot. It's like 90 there right now, but it's going to be nice apparently this weekend.
Yeah, it's dropping.
So
it was like 100 last week, and now it's 90s. And then by the time we get there, it's like mid-70s, which is great.
So buy 1 Story of the Year and 1 Bayside hoodie per person.
Yeah.
1 for each day.
Perfect.
You'll only have to wait like 4 hours online, I think.
Right.
Okay, that's good. And then just go pick them up and then put it on in your 70 degrees, which would make me very sweaty. And that's great. Okay, so we have that, and then Nick, you are going overseas.
Oh yeah, not for a while though, buddy.
Oh, that's
not
next
February.
Okay.
Oh,
just making sure. I'm just trying to keep people informed.
No, I will be in California until February. That's not true. I think I'm going to Florida in January for my nephew's first birthday, but that's about it.
Okay, that's great. And then Adam, you guys have a couple shows before the year's end.
We are doing a UK and mainland Europe tour with Yellowcard, which is the 2nd and 3rd weeks of November, if I'm not wrong. We'll be home the day before Thanksgiving, basically.
Nice.
So,
thank goodness.
Good times.
Just in time.
Just in time to give thanks.
Yeah.
For
Black Friday.
vegan meats.
Just everything. Just for everything,
Yeah, give thanks for a great political
killing turkeys.
climate.
Right.
Because that became a thing.
Great actual climate. Yeah, everything's ideal right now, so we're going to give thanks for that.
Right.
And then we're going to have a Star Wars-filled holiday season with Skeleton Crew, so we're pumped about that.
Let's go.
But there could be more in the works, because just a few days ago, within this past week, we heard from Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. This was last weekend, I guess, right?
Hello there.
It was LA Comic-Con. Nick, did you go?
I went for like a few hours on Friday because that's all the time I had to spare. And I hung out with Dustin from Roosevelt's for a little bit, but I didn't see much.
Point being, there was a panel that Ewan and Hayden were on, and Obi-Wan Season 2 was brought up, and Ewan McGregor said some pretty exciting stuff. I mean, little things, but exciting. He hinted at the idea that There are some ideas being worked on. He said exploring is the term he used. We actually have the video clip here, and we could show that really quickly if we want to bring everybody up to speed.
I think we should.
Let's do that.
Obi-Wan Season 2. Yes. There's a couple of things. I quite like to wear that armor. I was speaking to someone earlier from the Clone Wars. That would be something that I'd enjoy, but I was figuring out with someone in the autograph queue today that would mean I'd have to be young, I'd have to be younger. Having those, it's the de-aging, it's the dots on your face for 3 months, but I'll do it, I don't care. And that way Hayden and I can really get back together again. So there's definitely that is one idea. And the other one is, obviously, between the end of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and when Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan Kenobi, there's got to be another few stories in there. And we're definitely exploring that, I think, would be the word to say. Thanks, man. I'll take you with me when I go and see Disney. Say, he wants me, this guy. Okay, I'm coming back.
Okay, so we've all probably heard this quoted by now. The thing I noticed when I went back and watched and cut this together, the thing he says at the very end is it's
like he slips up.
Does he slip up and say, we're coming back? In the sense that he's slipping up and confirming it, like we're thinking, or is he just still in this like hypothetical funny scenario with the guy where he brings the guy there and he's like, oh, Obi-Wan's coming back because I'm here with this guy. You know what I mean?
That's probably what he meant, but that's not fun. It'd be better if he just slipped up.
Yeah.
Right.
I would agree.
I think
but he uses the word, exploring ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He says so.
Yeah, and this sounds like it already happened, right? Like the exploration has at least been a conversation. So that's kind of exciting.
Lunch with Kathleen Kennedy kind of thing, like the Daisy Ridley story that we heard.
Sure. I think we've proven enough times that the actors have gotten much more. I think actors who are at the gravitas level of Ewan McGregor, especially in the Star Wars verse. Ewan McGregor, anytime he shows interest in Star Wars, they're listening because he's one of the few actors, now that Hayden's back in the fray, that adds something to it. But Obi-Wan is one of those original actors, besides Tamira Morrison, who doesn't have the same star power, that truly is available to make more stories. And we talked about this on Acolyte, Obi-Wan was one of the most watched shows Disney's ever put out.
Yeah.
And they put it out in a pandemic. I think there's a lot of people who look back on projects back then and say, sure, what would we do different this time? And the truth is I think the idea of season 2 doesn't have to necessarily be a series. It could be a movie finally, and it could have all of the stuff. And I think that's what we're curious about in regards to what would we do? What kind of story would we want to hear? Because getting back to my original point, if the fans are vocal enough, Rosario talks about Boss Logic, this online, he's like a graphic artist.
Yeah.
She's like, he was the entire reason why I got noticed to possibly be the role. I mean, that's just fans being fans,
Wild.
Right? So the fact that like you hear that enthusiasm and that he didn't just look over and say, oh, wouldn't that be awesome? I would love to. I hope we can. And then change the subject. I mean, he's sitting here hamming it up. He's like, imagine me in Clone Wars armor. People are losing their shit.
Amazing.
So
that's great.
Yeah, you know that he knows what to do. He knows how to get people to get their attention. And that's always with interest, money, online chatter. He's not dumb.
How about Mandalorian Clone Wars armor?
Yes.
That's where my head went, honestly. Because he's talking about de-aging a little bit. I don't know why. Maybe because I sort of own that armor.
Right.
My head went there before it went to, what we know of in the, his
General
normal
Kenobi.
Clone Wars. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Mike, when you mention, a movie instead of a series, or in addition to a series, there's no reason to think that he can't be popping up in different things, just like Hayden is. Why couldn't we have an Obi-Wan focused series or a Vader focused series or a completely new series where he pops up here or there, but then he's also maybe in the call it the Heir to the Empire film that Filoni's doing. Say there's a flashback there because this is going to be very Ahsoka heavy, Ahsoka and the Mandalorian and everything all coming together. Thrawn. Obi-Wan could be involved there. It could be in a flashback. It could be both. In addition to whatever else we're going to speculate about right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
I love that.
He seems
It's all on
down.
the table.
Hayden's been doing it. I think it's.
I mean, just even bringing up de-aging, it's like the conversation must have been had already,
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about potentially in the time frame that is left that he mentioned between the end of the Obi-Wan series and A New Hope. Some of that has, well, a lot of that time has been spoken for with Rebels, people that he would, in theory, be talking to directly. He's only ever seen in a holo, his holo from episode 3, and, mentioned here or there, I guess. And then there's, of course, the scene with Maul, but, like, it's a big galaxy, plenty of people out there. So we have a couple lists of some heroes and villains that he could interact with, plausible ones that are alive, they're active. So we're excluding, of course, like the whole Rebels crew because he doesn't see them. We know pretty confidently that, like, prior to Rebels, Kanan, he was just kind of in hiding, right, between that scene in the Bad Batch intro and that, right? I assume there's stuff on paper written.
He just disappears. And truthfully, I mean, Kenobi does in some regard too. And I think that's always the difficult part is if it's me and they say, what do we get? Like we broke down that line when Vader senses Kenobi on the Death Star. We broke that line down to, I haven't felt this presence since, right?
Right.
There had to be a significant amount of time. Vader can't fight Kenobi 16 times until they finally fight in A New Hope, right? So, in my opinion, we got to leave Vader alone. That's not to say that Vader can't be the one giving the orders. That can't be, Vader can't be licking his wounds, but we can't have lightsaber on lightsaber again. We already had that. It was epic, and I think at some point,
I agree with that.
It introduces other characters that hold a lot of weight for Kenobi, and I think if he's talking about de-aging, I think we do have to go back to the Clone Wars in that regard. I think we have to give, I personally, I don't know if Tamura has the stamina for it, but I would love to see Tamura actually get to play both Rex and Cody and a couple of other clones at the same time. Like, I think it would be incredible to see those characters reverse engineered from that standpoint. And I think it seems like people are excited enough about the technology to be able to pull that off. The nice part about both those characters is they're wearing helmets most of the time, but it would be pretty cool to see.
Well, when it was done, in the prequels, it was all floating heads anyway. So
right,
that technique has since been refined. So it's although it's possible, not likely that they would go that route, but I don't know. You could do all kinds of stuff. I just lost a whole bunch of lights back here. Something you mentioned though, which I thought was really interesting. The idea. Sorry, everything's a mess. The idea of. No, I completely lost it. Yep, spacing out.
Cody, Commander Cody.
Prior to that,
Ahsoka, Fulcrum.
I don't know.
We're
it's
in
not going to come back. It sucks. It was a really, really good thought. Oh,
it's gonna come
Vader.
back.
Okay, here we go. All right. We're back.
Something you mentioned that I agree with as well. Going back to Vader's bad, but there's something interesting about Kenobi now being in a place where he can handle things more strategically and more fully connected. He's playing with a full deck again after the events of the Kenobi series. So if he's involved and he's doing things, and he and Vader are like ships in the night passing each other, and it's this cat and mouse game, but it's not stated so blatantly in it. It's, say a whole season plays out with Luke, and pick your villain who's connected to the Empire or Vader or Palpatine in some way, and it ends with something that indicates to Vader, okay, Kenobi's still out there. But we don't see them interact. It's nothing like that. I mean, we'll get to the villains. I think everyone listed here at this point is connected to the Empire because they're all baddies, so they're all doing bad things in the bad place with the bad people. So it just, think about the temptation to like please the fans, just like they did at the end of Rogue One. You try to write a thing without Vader, and then it's like, man, but if you put him in at the end, it's pretty sick. Like,
well, I mean,
I can see them going down that road again.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I mean, we know that in A New Hope, Luke wants to join the Imperial Academy. It is his dream of escaping. There is something interesting that could be Kenobi seeing the full Imperial propaganda machine, watching it happen, right? Like enough that, young men across the galaxy are being told, join the Academy. Same thing for Han Solo. Like, it was so prevalent of like, what did, like, I don't want to get super political like Andor, but there would be something interesting, I think, about Kenobi being able to have to rely on his sense of patience and poise to not necessarily give himself away, but also know that like his return to the Force is going to put a bigger target on his map for other Inquisitors or someone that can sense that. So I think there could be something interesting there. But I personally would kind of love to see the Imperial rollout of recruitment, and that's where someone like Cody would be amazing, because there would be a deep story there for Cody about knowing that you're one of the few clones that stuck around, and by the time we also saw one of the other 332nd, he's got his helmet upside down on what was that? Started with a D. What was the name of that planet?
In the Kenobi series?
Physics buddy Joe, help me out. Yeah, what was that? I can't remember the name of that planet. But there's an interesting story there. Like, again, I think Tamura would have a field day knocking that out of the park of knowing, of knowing that Cody's like, I am replaceable, but I kept showing back up. Dayu, that's what it is. Thanks, Hammereth. So, I think there's a lot of interesting stories here at play that wouldn't have to necessarily be some giant space battle with Vader at the end. So,
well, let's talk about some possibilities. Let's talk about villains first. I have heroes listed first, but villains, the antagonist in the story is the key part, if we're going to exclude Vader almost entirely. We have to assume that Luke is going to be part of this, at least in the sense that, like, Obi-Wan feels like he shouldn't leave, but if he's going to have to, it's going to be something extreme. That's what you need for the story. You know what I mean? It has to be something extreme to pull him out of just like the series was, season 1 was, it's Leia. The only thing that's going to keep him, that's going to get him out of that cave and away from Luke is going to be something big. So the villains, the potential villains, we know from the end of last season, all the Inquisitors are still in play. We don't know what happens to Reva between that and Rebels when we see the remaining active Inquisitors. Asajj Ventress is still in play. She is, at this point, sort of like in the in-between. She's got the yellow lightsaber, or we think she's like on her way to that. She talked about in the Bad Batch that she just, they ask which side she's on. She says, mine. She's on her own in that sense. Right. Kind of a gray character. And they have a long history, so that could be really interesting. But she's not big enough to be like kind of a big bad, but a great, like, questionable character to throw in the mix. Boba Fett, at this time, still a piece of shit. And there's not a ton written in this, like, 10 to 5 BBY thing for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, a second season of Kenobi knowing too much about like the business of Disney. Like it should lean a little bit more in like Favreau Filoni opening up the toy box, you know, and like it should just have Boba Fett in it. An old school Boba Fett that we didn't get in the Book of Boba Fett all that much. It's like I think that they're gonna want like a slam dunk sort of thing. So why not just have old school Boba Fett in it?
And then do you bring in Cad Bane as well, and get to
Could
see
be.
that interaction that's mentioned that was
The reason
Yeah.
that
that
Boba
was in a
got his
book,
dent,
right?
the reason that Boba got his dent.
Or no, that was the
The
Yeah.
animatics.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
Right.
So they can
I mean-
retread that, build that in some way.
That's interesting. I mean, it's going back to the Clone Wars, right? And that Kenobi fought alongside the clones as such a prevalent part of who they were. And I can't. I mean, yeah, Boba Fett would be, Kenobi and Black Chrysanthemum have met in the comics.
Mm.
So there is plenty of story within the clones. Kenobi, I mean, even just Kenobi acting as a vessel between Boba and the rest of the clones is interesting.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of time of Kenobi going, hey, I wish I felt bad for your dad, but he tried to kill me, and actually look what he did. But he also gave me, your dad also gave me a lot of my friends. And I think that's pretty interesting too, to have that dynamic there of putting to bed his past that's not just Vader would be super cool.
So Boba, Cody, and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a drama triangle.
Right. Because
And then
at this point, Boba's like a teenager, or he's like 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking Attack of the Clones. Luke is, how old we say? Luke's like 12, or I mean,
What,
obviously, if we
Attack
do
of
it
the
later.
Clones?
No. I'm saying by
What'd
the
you say?
time the Kenobi series is, Luke was like 8 or 9 years old.
Kenobi series is 10. It's 9 BBY, right? Yeah. So Luke is 10.
Right. So, Boba was 12, 13, or he was probably 10. He was probably 10, 11 in Attack of the Clones. So he's
Mhm.
20 and he's spicy.
Yeah.
And we met him in Clone Wars, and he was pretty spicy then too. But he was already starting to put together Embo and Orsang and a lot of those characters too. So I mean, there's a lot here for the bounty hunters to eat, frankly.
And that all ties right into what seems like the most obvious big bad, aside from the looming empire situation, is the crime syndicates.
Right.
Direct contact with Maul probably wouldn't work out, but it could be about that pursuit, because they make it seem like in Rebels he's been searching for him forever and doesn't finally find him until that moment around the campfire out in the desert. He's lost his mind. Like everything he's tried with the syndicates and all this shit, he's had this quote success as a crime lord, but Kenobi is still the thing that's eating him away until he's just this crazy old guy.
Kenobi.
And you've got, so the crime syndicates, Maul's Shadow Collective that he calls together at what is it? Second to last episode of Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
Third to last episode, whatever it is. Crimson Dawn, that's Dryden Voss from Solo. The Pike Syndicate.
Right.
We've seen the Pikes in live action before. They've been Solo, and then
Book of Boba Fett.
And then Book of Boba Fett. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. The Black Sun, the Hutts, and the Kintan Striders. So the Hutts make a lot of sense.
Yep.
We're on Tatooine. All the other ones, you can get anywhere in a second, apparently, in Star Wars. So this seems like the way to go. The whole crime syndicate route, and then bringing in all these ancillary folks who are associated. What do you guys think?
I like it. I think it's a way to get kind of the Ventress and Boba Fett's and, Cad Bane to bounty hunters. If you have crime syndicates hiring all these people to, I don't know what the story would be, but something that gets Kenobi. I mean, it gets tricky because we thought originally before the Kenobi series, we thought he wouldn't leave Tatooine, and he did for Leia. So how do we get him to do that again? Which is why now that we're talking about it, I'm just like, maybe it should just all be flashback. Maybe it should be all pre the Kenobi series, you know? Like maybe it's just a kick-ass story they come up with that is in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I like I guess the thing was, if it's Jabba, it could just stay on Tatooine, you know?
Right.
So he doesn't technically have to leave.
Well, that's always the point, right? It's like if someone figures out that Kenobi will not leave, then others come to him. And when you have the bounty hunters, everyone knows that you don't mess with the Hutts. Like Tatooine is owned by the Hutts. The other, after Jabba is gone, we can get in all that other stuff. But the point is like we're in prime peak ultimate Jabba the Hutt, right? And you had the other Hutts that were clearly around trying to get part of Jabba's scheme too. So I think we tend to think of Obi-Wan as being this almost like knight. He needs a more regal story. He needs a more dramatic story. But for me, I think Obi-Wan is one of those characters. I think it's hard when I'm saying that out loud. I think it's hard to think about you getting these really beautiful moments. You know, does he go to Dagobah? Does he have a conversation with, you know, Qui-Gon? He hasn't, you know, he's connected with Qui-Gon, so we're having these conversations. The visceral reaction to believing that Quinlan Vos was still alive. There's so much there, and I think sometimes we tend to like tell Force stories, and we leave crime stories, like we leave them apart for some reason, because I think we don't, you know, we Solo, for instance, is just a straight up heist movie, right? And there's no mention of the Force. We keep that separate, and I feel like, you know, that's kind of the focus of the Obi-Wan series. So I think a Force user among crime, organized, that strength in numbers, that can clearly still outmatch a Jedi would be awesome. But I also know that Star Wars hasn't necessarily been that great about combining those two. You know,
Except in the Clone Wars.
Except in the Clone Wars, exactly.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that was more about manipulation. It wasn't about, you know, getting.
And the Jedi were in like a police role, so it kind of made 100%. Sense at the time. Yeah.
Right. But even I just even look at like video games, like Jedi Survivor is a, you know, story about Force users, and then Star Wars Outlaws is just about being a scum rat on multiple planets. So they're, you know, they keep them apart.
Colin Adams in the patron chat says we need more stories outside of Tatooine. I love it, but we have so much Tatooine. Agreed. And Mike, to your point about, you know, getting some other Force user in the mix, if he's going to get pulled away from Tatooine, to answer Nick's question, since the door is now open, you know, he's met Luke. We get that nice closure at the end, or we get the closure of the beef and the opening of the door at the end of the series when Owen lets him meet Luke, right? What if it's the kind of thing where another threat comes to Tatooine? He has to take Luke away, or someone has to stay, because it's like, okay, they know I'm here. I need to go get ahead of it, get out, and handle this similar situation. You know, retread that kind of dynamic from season 1. And then we bring in, a partner on the light side of the situation. Let's go down the list of who's available. The Rebel Alliance is very active, so of course he can contact Bail. Mon Mothma at this point she's still trying to play it cool, you know, all up through Andor. She is who she is. But Ahsoka's in full fulcrum mode at this point. That would be sick,
right?
Obviously,
that's great.
The path, like you guys mentioned before, with Quinlan, all of this could be, you know, you think about like creating 2 like larger communities. You've got the villains all with the crime syndicates living under the Empire's radar, where it's kind of like they're aware, but they're under the radar in the sense of like,
They
evil
exist-
lets
they
evil
exist,
do
right,
evil
right.
stuff, right?
Right.
And
They
then
keep a
on
cork in it.
the good side, you've got the Rebel Alliance, you've got Ahsoka, you've got the Path, Qui-Gon, like we mentioned. That leads to Yoda if we're talking about Dagobah. So that story of learning to commune with others through the Force and survive death, that's a big story to be told. And if all that's trying to happen in the mix with this, let's say it starts on Dagobah, right? It just jumps ahead and he's trying to do it. And then he feels this threat, this darkness in the Force. And it could be the Inquisitors, it could be Asajj or something, and he has this vision of Luke, and there's he has to go then address that threat. Cal Kestis is alive at this point. Ren Beck. There are some good candidates out there. Quinlan's dead, right?
there's-
No,
Guys,
Kelleran
Quinlan's-
Beck's gone.
when did he die?
Didn't he? Like, or did
No,
he?
he just got introduced,
Yeah,
bro.
he saved Grogu and they bailed.
I was
he
going to
took him to
say
some
there
friends.
is, I'm having a hard time thinking of Star Wars without business and Disney
Right, yeah.
involved. And I why not have a path story where Obi-Wan cross paths with Grogu? Why not?
Yep.
That's
Hey.
good for business.
Physics buddy Joe, good point. He dropped in a gif of grown up Omega.
Hmm.
Oh, that would be sick.
I mean, I think it's hard. Like, it's very easy to get excited about all of these potential leads that we know. But like, again, Nick, to your point, Disney has to protect one of their biggest assets, and that is the fact that they have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker available to do shows. So it's like tying them into a character like Omega would require some, like, it's not even just going back to the Clone Wars. Like, Rex was never in, like, Rex got 3 seconds of screen time in an Ahsoka flashback, which wasn't that popular of a show. Even introducing Ahsoka into Obi-Wan is a little bit of a risk. And I think that they've understood that in regards to going, how do we want to keep these storylines? Because we're fans. We're watching all of it like a bunch of crazy people going, how do we connect these dots? So it's almost like you have to think of a character that has enough gravitas to stand alongside Kenobi, because I think they, looking back on their decision making of going, okay, we introduce an Inquisitor that no one's heard of. Now we're in the age of toxic fandom. Are we going to take a risk like that, or do we just finally go, Quinlan Vos? We have to recast Quinlan Vos. We have to, we have to bring Yoda back. We have to figure all this stuff out. Like, I'm with you. It's very hard to think of what Disney would deem as a safe layup at this point, when it seems like they're moving away from making shows entirely.
I'm thinking of it more of actually using to use your word, gravitas of like Anakin or Obi-Wan to actually make Ahsoka, like Rosario Ahsoka, a bigger deal.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming at it. Or
Sure.
Grogu making Grogu a bigger deal if he ties into all these all the old characters and stuff like that. That was
Right.
my angle.
Yeah.
It's like Grogu's like the the hot new band that's getting radio play that Linkin Park is bringing out on the tour for their comeback album. Like
sure. The Blink-182 bringing out Turnstile. You're like, oh,
Exactly,
okay,
exactly.
yeah, okay. I mean, so
Grogu is Turnstile. All right, roll the end credits. We're done
right,
here.
Right. Oh, that Mr. Ray. So is there from your perspective though, and I want to hear both of your perspectives on this. We did have a little bit of a retread of the slash in the helmet, the exposure of Vader, because they know that a lot of people did not watch the Clone Wars. They know it. The show hasn't been fed in years. There's not a lot of Clone Wars content coming out that's not new in regards to like Bad Batch. Animated is animated, right? are you pro or con retelling some of these moments in live action similar to how we got it in Ahsoka?
So like kind of like a flashback for a second, because that's fine by me.
Yeah, but obviously like the moments, do we have a moment in a particular battle with Obi-Wan with a certain character that people would go, oh, hey, that's, I mean, could you imagine season 7 finale of Ahsoka?
You're talking about a
telling-
live action retelling.
I'm talking about a
Yeah.
live action retelling of Ahsoka explaining to Obi-Wan what happened when the 332nd turned on her.
Oh yeah,
Like,
That'd be killer.
hand it
Would-
over.
okay.
Give it. All right, let's grab some things from the patron chat here. So the blue guy 808 said, I feel like the ending of Obi-Wan meant that Obi-Wan himself was relinquishing the responsibility of protecting Luke to Owen so that Luke could have the childhood Obi-Wan never had. Good point. He comes back again and says, I believe that Luke's part in Obi-Wan's story is over until A New Hope. Couple things on that. One, it still feels like some retconning is required to
Yeah,
make
right.
the dialogue in A New Hope make enough sense, because he's like, oh, old Ben Kenobi. And he just seems too familiar with him to be like, oh yeah, old Ben Kenobi, the guy I met when I was 10, that one time in the desert when I was playing spaceships on the thing. Like, he's not going to remember that. There has to be something else. And then Physics Buddy Joe says the only thing that was left hanging is how Owen again gets grumpy with Kenobi after they make nice. By the time of A New Hope, he's grumpy again. So to me, that
I agree with that.
So something there is like, okay, you proved yourself. I'm going to let you meet the kid. And then that goes to shit. And so he's finally like, that's it. I gave you another chance, and you ended up taking this kid off somewhere, almost got him killed. You're done.
And I agree with that. I think by the time we meet Owen, he really doesn't like Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
In A New Hope, right? So it is, I'm with that. I'm with Physics Buddy Joe on that like there is, if Kenobi just played nice for another 12 years, 14 years, 18 years, what, like, Owen's going to be like, oh yeah, he's cool. He's fine.
Right.
He's around when we need a babysit. Me and Brew are going out tonight. I'm going to call Ben and see if he wants to come over. No, I think he brings more chaos to the homestead. I mean, he has to enough to know that like that dude is dangerous. If he is around Luke is in danger, and that's how he feels, right? So, just tell the whole show from R2's perspective, and let's just get this over with.
Yeah.
Like why? Like R2 being so motivated to hit the ground rolling. I mean, we got to know.
This is totally something we haven't talked about. What about a Tales of the Jedi style, like anthology series of Obi-Wan? So not necessarily a full-on beginning and end
story.
narrative. Yeah. But like maybe 2 or 3 episodes of a Clone War story, or something like that.
Yeah. So
Hasn't
you're
been
saying
done.
a live action version of Tales of the Jedi.
Pretty much, yeah. Like a 3-episode arc of a story. Not necessarily
I
like
love
here's
that.
something that changes the way we look at A New Hope, like just a Clone Wars mission.
3,
that sort of thing.
6 episodes, 3 2-episode thing, or 9.
Yeah, something like that.
3 arcs that like have a bunch of time between them, like
Mhm.
the Steve Jobs movie, right?
Yeah.
It's 3 key moments that are spaced out.
Totally, yeah.
That tell the larger story.
And what would you
like that.
so in those micro stories, what would you tell in those? Let's say if we did 3.
Yeah.
What would you?
I'm not sure.
What
I didn't get that far. I didn't get that far. My idea that I just had 30 seconds ago.
He's like, you guys like it? It's up to you.
Season 1 did a version of that, but used those flashbacks just as like supplemental material rather than treating them as like 3 specific moments that add up to something that isn't, they stand alone, but then the sum of them is something more important rather than being supplemental to, sort of like cutaways. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would love that.
I mean, personally, I'd love a little bit more. I mean, going back to, the ideas of going, if you're Disney right now, you've got to be looking at what else is there besides Ewan McGregor, right? And I still keep coming back to Tamara Morrison. Like, we still don't know how. I mean, Boba Fett still has the potential to be the hero of Mandalorian Grogu. He still has potential to be the Mandalore. But if Din chooses Grogu instead of the mantle of becoming, if Bo-Katan gets cannon fodder and that's like her big moment, she sacrifices to redeem herself, and then Boba. I mean, I would love more stories of Boba Fett. In the way
Why couldn't they take the same approach that they do with Pedro and Brendan Wayne, where it's just get someone to play Boba Fett, and the random times he's got to take his helmet off, it's Tamara, and he voices it.
I mean, at this point, Daniel Logan's available just for a thing,
and chomping at the bit.
He is.
I mean, that's the thing too with you're saying who else is available. I mean, Hayden's not really working besides Star Wars, right? So just use him.
Well, you know what I'm saying. I'm more like, I think he's going to serve a purpose as, Ahsoka's kind of Force Master, right? Her in season 2, which the rumor is it's filming in the spring. I think using Clone Wars, I mean, we have to get him and Hayden together doing stuff like that, but I think we can live in the past as much as we want, but I think for Star Wars looking forward, they have to figure out how to get Obi-Wan so that we don't have this isolated story again, that people aren't just going, oh, watch, he's going to go on some wacky adventure with Luke as a kid. I'm looking at that from going, man, I'm trying to insulate them from people's grumpiness,
I mean, I think the idea of wrapping up the Kelleran Beck saving Grogu and taking him to quote his friends thing. Well, he couldn't take him to Obi-Wan right there at that moment. Well, I mean, we don't know what Obi-Wan does immediately after, right? Or is that in a book? We know he descends to the point emotionally that he's in at the beginning of the series, but like immediately after, when he says, I'll take the boy, blah blah blah, and he goes and he drops him off, we see the end of Revenge of the Sith. I mean, Kelleran could be, he's like a day behind him, maybe.
Right.
He because it's mid-Order 66, the thing we saw, and then they bail. He could be bouncing around the galaxy trying to find someone who's not dead. Yoda's long gone.
Right. He out.
So, God, how sick would it be if Ahmed Best got his own series?
It would be awesome.
Got his own like full arc. He and Grogu just like kind of hiding out on the run post Order 66.
I think he's the right age, and I think he has the life experience to not really need to act, And I think what you see is like a lot of these people who return to acting that aren't trying to achieve the fame and the fortune of what a lot of people get into acting for. I think his perspective would be just incredible. Amaranth says Kelleran goes back to Naboo and leaves Grogu with Jar Jar. We laugh. But you know what? Like Naboo will look much different after the siege. Naboo is an incredible opportunity for Padme to get some, for the Amidala family to get some backstory. I think there's a lot there. I think there's we could sit here and draw crumb trails back to so many moments in the prequels that would be just incredible. I'd love to see him. I'd love to see Dexter Dexter Jester be like, "Oh, Kenobi, you're alive. That's great." It's all at the end, and too, like Kamino's destroyed at this point, right?
Yeah.
But Camino is starting to re-terraform itself, right?
Well, it's all.
It's
I'm
not
just
stormy anymore.
But it's all still just. I mean, was that a moment, or was that? Was that just like a sunny morning?
I don't. Well,
Because it's all water, regardless.
Right. But there could be. I don't know. That's why we have this podcast. Lose our minds over stuff like this. So, I liked a lot of the patron comments. I liked a lot of the way that they were doing stuff, and I guess time will tell. I do always think it's weird though. Do you guys remember when Liam Neeson went on Jimmy Kimmel?
Yeah.
And they were like, so you still have anything from Star Wars? And he like showed Jimmy Kimmel his lightsaber that's on the stand. And people are like, he's got to be in the series. He's like, no. I wish they would. I'm waiting for them to call me. This thing of Cal Kestis, Cameron Monaghan being called, it's sometimes when a quote really gets out there, it makes you think it was kind of aided by PR. There's got to be something.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, Cameron Monaghan is a pretty big actor. I mean, he's a good actor. Kind of would seem weird that they wouldn't pull a.
Considering that the games are successful. Again, hate to say this for like the 19th time on this podcast, but like they're at this point they're like they need locks, like they need solid success story. Like, hey, one of the best things that they've done in a decade of owning Lucasfilm is the Jedi Survivor, games. So, and he's of age. They have stories that are happening during this time. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Well, you have Marin. Marin is still the Night Sister, so you have ties into more ties into Thrawn, Ahsoka. There's flashbacks of Anakin trying to explain what happened. Does Anakin need to tell Obi-Wan something to better explain the future of where Baylan Skoll is looking to? Does that strengthen Ahsoka season 2? Physics buddy Joe goes, Hondo, hello, my friends.
Obvious cameo.
You want to talk about the crime syndicates? How do you not talk about Hondo Naka? I'm in for
board.
something like that. It doesn't have to be all serious. I would literally pay for a buddy cop episode of Kenobi just trying to keep up with the ridiculousness that is Hondo Naka. 100%.
Well, the thing that is obvious is that these are all stories that we want to hear. This is all stuff that's up in the air and can be done. So Disney's calculus comes down to what pairings can they do that won't blow it for future stuff? What's the most optimal one on the level that Nick keeps mentioning? Like, what's the home run that won't kind of blow it for them? Like, yes, this is a hit, but then that leaves, if he spends time in the universe doing this, when this is still available, it's like, this thing over here is a more sure bet financially, but then he can't be in two places at once. So, you know what I mean? They're running those equations when it comes down to it. Filoni's pushing for stories. Favreau's pushing for stories. Story Group has all their ideas that may or may not get, bubbled up to the people who make the real decisions. And then the people who have money in mind are thinking, okay, what's going to crush at the box office? What's going to crush on Disney Plus and keep people subscribed?
That's the truth. Well, we know that Ewan listens to the podcast, so let's just have him listen to what we're talking about. Pitch it to Kathleen. Start this thing up. Let us know. We're around. We're around to sit in Story Group. We're around People come out.
I'll
of
work
pod,
for cheap.
talk-
I will work so cheap.
Same,
I just want
man.
some money.
Just a little bit.
All right, let's wrap it up. We're going to do the after show segment for patrons, the bonus segment from the chat pack. The question in the category of characters is, you've got a job to do and you want to hire the absolute best bounty hunter. Who do you choose for the job?
Jeez. Okay. All right.
It's relevant.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
All right, we'll talk about that again in the after show segment, the bonus segment for patrons, patreon.com/ThinkTheMakerPod. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Patrons, thanks for interacting. That was fun. And until next time, may the force be... Son of a bee sting. May the force be with you. If you enjoy Thank the Maker, you can support us by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/ThinkTheMakerPod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, our recording live stream, and more. Our patrons quite literally make Thank the Maker possible.